everyone, it's Blake here from ChessPathways.com, and today I want to show you a game I played and kind of explore this theme as we go along the game and talk about a space advantage and how to use it. Everyone knows space is good, but a lot of players don't really know how to use a space advantage when the opponent gives it to them. Now, this was just a bullet game, so it's pretty sloppy at times. I definitely missed some opportunities, my opponent did as well. And we're going to take a look at the whole game, but we kind of want to think about this space theme throughout the game. So I have the white pieces. E4, D6. It looks like it's going to be a perp defense, but after D4, my opponent played Knight C6, and now we're in kind of original territory. No one really plays this way, so I thought this had to be punished, and I have to take a space advantage with D5 and F4. Looks good for white. Knight G6. And now, probably if I was being prudent, if it was a tournament game, I'd be looking to play maybe C4, maybe just Knight C3 or Knight F3. But I thought I'd play H4 and try to really, like I said, get in some original territory here and really take as much space as I can, threatening just H5, trapping the knight. So my opponent played here E6 to give the knight a square, H5, Knight E7, C4, C6, and now we're already at kind of a critical juncture of the game. So one very important thing to realize when you have space, whether it's just the two pawns in the center or, even more space like this, anytime there's pawn tension, or even when there's not pawn tension, you always have to consider pushing some of your pawns versus leaving them where they are. Very often, a lot of players have the temptation to push the pawns as soon as possible. I'm kind of the opposite. I usually like to leave those pawns where they are unless there's a very good reason not to. For example, when I think of those kind of big center positions you might get in Ruy Lopez, for example, let's just take a look at some Ruy Lopez kind of positions, maybe in the classical variation, where black kind of lets you bully their bishop a little bit. Let's say castles, d4, takes. Black shouldn't play this way, but now we get this giant center here. You have to weigh keeping the pawns where they are versus pushing them forward and bullying the black pieces, right? The downside of pushing is you can leave squares behind, right? If you play e5, if black could meet that with knight d5, they kind of get a really nice outpost there. Here they can't do it, of course, because we have a bishop on d5, but if they could safely somehow dominate this d5 square later on, it'd be really hard to evict their pieces from there. Whereas, if we keep the pawns flexible where they are, it's kind of like the idea of the threat being stronger than the execution, right? A very famous quote, where maybe we don't push right away, but if we keep these pawns where they are, every single turn for the rest of the game, black is going to have to weigh the impact of d5 and e5 before they make every move. Meanwhile, we control a bunch of squares here in the center of the board, right? So going back to our example here, in our game. Let's just go ahead and get back to the moment here after c6. I kind of wanted to keep my pawns where they were, and I think that was actually the wrong choice. We know there's pawn tension here. Whenever there's pawn tension, you have three choices, right? You can take, you can push. Here I can't push because there's a pawn in the way, but you should still consider it. Or you can maintain the tension, and I tried to maintain it with knight c3. D takes e6 seemed counterintuitive to me because I kind of give away kind of the spearhead of my formation. But it's a good move here, and I shouldn't have filtered it out. I know it's bullet, so I'm playing on instincts, but in a tournament game, hopefully I would have found that d takes e6 is very strong here. D takes e6, bishop takes e6, and f5, just marching forward with the space. And the point is, e5 is an outpost, that's true. Whenever you march forward, you give up outposts, but it's very hard for black to reach this outpost. And meanwhile, d6 is super weak. I can't take it right away, because there's discoveries on the queen. But simply, let's say bishop f4 in a position like this, and it becomes very hard for black to defend this d6 pawn. Maybe even knight c3 first and then bishop f4, trying to discourage the d5 break, trying to undermine the f5 pawn. But d6 would be very weak in a position like this, and I like white's position. Knight c3 allows black to possibly play something like e takes d5, takes, and isolate that d-pawn. Not the end of the world, but with really no development here for white, I kind of feel like black's just going to pile up on this pawn, maybe knight f6. And I tried to analyze this a bit after the game. I could play maybe bishop b5, try to develop with check. But I really don't feel like white gets a big advantage here. I looked at this trying to just make sure this pawn stays safe, but simply queen g4, and I think black's actually doing fairly well here, despite giving away so much space. So I think I really missed a chance here with d takes e6, and we're going to see this theme pop up again. So in the game I played knight c3, black played queen b6, I played knight f3 just developing, knight f6, and here bishop d3 I think was also a mistake. Again, I missed a chance here to play d takes e6, which again would be very strong. D takes e6, bishop takes, and here after f5, bishop d7, I can actually get away with queen takes d6. I missed this because there's no discovery. Knight takes f5, runs into queen e5 check. And actually, okay, black does win a pawn back. They could come right back and kind of walk right into this pin. But here, I believe, if I remember my analysis correctly, c5 was very strong. c5, possibly intending bishop c4, and white has a big initiative in a position like this. Black is kind of tied up. But in the game, bishop d3, knight g4, queen e2, bishop d7. And here I played e5, kind of the maximalist approach, right? Not resolving any tension, just thrusting the other pawn forward. I was banking on ideas like if they take, I can play d6 and then take back, get a passed pawn, stuff like that. If the e-file blows open, there could be some pins here on the e-pawn to the king. Kind of the principled approach, the kind of move you might make in a bullet game. But I missed again that d takes e6 is still very, very strong. For example, here, if they take with the f-pawn, I even have here rook h4. And it kind of really makes use of the fact that I have the pawn on h5. Black can't play h5 to kind of cement their knight here on g4. They would have to, there we go, coming back to the position. They would have to play knight h6, and now simply bishop e3, just kind of kicking the queen away, and white has a big initiative here. If they take with the bishop after taking on e6, simply again, f5. I know they have the outpost on e5, but this is actually very instructive. f5 gives away the e5 outpost, but I missed here, we just have bishop f4. And again, it's very hard for black to get adequate control of this e5 outpost. Meanwhile, d6 is a giant target. So this would be a great way to use white's space advantage, resolve the tension at a key moment, exchange the pawns, and use that burst of activity and the better pieces to start initiating threats and tactics. e5 also kind of, starts the tactical sequence going, makes this kind of double pawn tension. But it's not as obviously good as simply taking and playing for f5 or rook h4. So we'll see how it goes. Takes, and I have to take with the knight. I have to kind of use the fact that the e-file is open to tactically defend the d5 pawn. Otherwise, the pawn and knight are attacking it. But if the e-file is open, there's going to be pins on the e-file. That was part of the idea. I think the downside is too many pieces come off the board. And it's not so clear that white has a giant advantage here, maybe the advantage that I deserved after black played such a strange opening. Here, black simply played f6, kicking the queen away, queen e4, and castled long. So black finally gets that king to safety. I have to deal with this d-pawn sooner or later, and black's kind of escaped the worst of the threats. Now that said, even though black evacuated the king out of the center, it is still pretty vulnerable here on c8. There's no c-pawn. And I thought I could try to attack the black king. So my idea here was to play bishop e3, attack the queen, give up the b2 pawn, and simply castle short. My knight's tactically defended here because I have pins on that c-file. And I thought that both kings are pretty open here, but I thought that black's king would be weaker than my king. Also, my two bishops are very, very strong, and black still has some pieces not doing very much. Again, we see the importance of a lead in development. So black tries to play king b8, get the king off the file, defend the a7 pawn. I play rook fc1. I want to play rook ab1 next turn. Knight takes, and thankfully there's no good discovery here on the queen, which I had calculated. I think objectively black is actually doing okay here. Black's up a pawn, and white's threats shouldn't work against best play. This would certainly be a good training position if you want to set this up, play it against a computer on chess.com or any platform of your choice, play it with both colors, and really learn how to play this position. I'd highly encourage you to do that. But of course, this is a bullet game. It's going to be decided on instincts, and in the game, black played bishop a3, trying to possibly make some threats here on the queen side. Possibly moving the queen away and hitting the rook might be the idea, but I'm not sure it's the best square for this bishop. So I played rook c to b1, and now black made a counterattack. They didn't save their queen, possibly because it's very hard to save the queen. I have threats to b7, which they probably should have addressed last turn, but they played bishop c6. And now think about how you would handle this with white. You might find a better move than I did, but I found something I was pretty satisfied with. My thinking was if only I can move this queen with check, then I can save my queen and simply take their queen. But I'm not sure if it's that simple. I played bishop takes a7, so that after they take, I can save my queen with check, and now pick up their queen. Looking at it now, I'm not sure though, because if they would have simply taken back on b2, I do lose a lot for the queen. Again, this is kind of outside the theme, the whole discussion of space, but certainly feel free to look into this and play some training games against a computer if you want to explore these themes further. But in the game, I think black played the wrong move here. They thought taking the bishop was more important than the rook. In time trouble, of course, it is bullet. And the rest of the game was decided by some last-second time scramble blunders. I think the important lesson from the game, again, goes back to the opening about that discussion of space. Don't be afraid to consider moves that give away kind of the spearhead of your formation, like d takes e6. Really consider every possibility, taking, pushing, or maintaining the tension when you have that pawn tension. And that's going to serve you well when you have a space advantage. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. Please click that like and subscribe button down below, and make sure you visit chesspathways.com and get signed up there. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds, and I will send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. It took me way too long to become a chess master, and I want to help you do it in a fraction of the time. Thanks, and I will see you there.